Have you ever felt that subtle push, that kind of almost automatic lean into a decision without quite understanding why?
Hmm.
Like you were, I don't know, a puppet on strings maybe, gently guided to click buy on some online ad or agree to a deal. And then later you're thinking, wait, how did I even get there?
Yeah, it's a really common feeling. Sometimes unsettling, actually.
Exactly. It's fascinating, but yeah, unsettling too. This ability to influence, to sway others. It holds just immense potential, doesn't it?
It really is.
It can build incredible things, thriving movements, communities, businesses that genuinely serve people, but, well, in the wrong hands, that exact same power. It can become a tool for something much darker, something, frankly, sinister, a means of cynical exploitation.
Absolutely.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into that profound and, let's be honest, often ethically complex world of persuasion and influence, especially how it all plays out in business. And we're grappling with a really provocative question, I think. Is understanding human psychology too powerful? Does it basically give people a user's manual for manipulation? One that, if you don't have a strong moral compass, kind of makes you a dangerous person in business?
That's a heavy question, a really important one.
It is. We're going to try and explore that fine line, that ethical tightrope that people walk when they master the art of influencing others, and really analyze the moral implications of the choices they make.
And to help us navigate this really intricate landscape, we've pulled together a pretty compelling set of sources for this deep dive. We're looking at, well, the whole spectrum, really.
Okay.
From the foundational stuff, the often benign-sounding principles of just effective human interaction, like the core of winning friends and influencing people.
But Carnegie, yeah.
Exactly. Right through to the cold, hard realities of historical Wall Street fraud, the calculated, sometimes systemic exploitation of information.
Wow.
And we'll also dig into academic analyses of our fundamental cognitive biases, the shortcuts our brains take, and explore the pervasive yet often hidden exploitation we're seeing now in the digital age, which is frequently disguised as just convenience or personalization.
Right. So this diverse stack of sources, it lets us look at not just what influence is and how it works, but really critically why it matters ethically.
Exactly, and how its misuse can profoundly impact individuals, markets, and just our general sense of trust in the world around us.
Okay. So our mission today is to thoroughly unpack these insights. We want to understand the psychological levers, peel back the layers of how our minds are susceptible, and really highlight that critical distinction between ethical persuasion, where everyone genuinely benefits, hopefully, and cynical manipulation, where one person's gain is basically another's loss.
Yeah, that distinction is crucial.
And it feels especially crucial now, doesn't it? With the rise of what people are calling dark patterns in digital design and this increasingly sophisticated exploitation of our cognitive biases.
Absolutely, it's everywhere.
So it's about empowering you, our listener, to kind of discern when influence is genuinely serving your best interests and when it's subtly, or maybe not so subtly, working against you, perhaps even without you consciously realizing it.
Right, helping you spot it.
Exactly. All right, let's unpack this fascinating topic. I know. The foundations of influence. Understanding how we're swayed. Let's start where it seems, most positive. Almost benevolent, really. What many people might just call the art of persuasion.
Okay.
When you think about timeless advice, Dale Carnegie's name almost always comes up, right? How to win friends and influence people.
God classic, absolutely.
And it lays out these simple but really effective concepts. And crucially, they don't feel like coercion. They're about improving personal effectiveness, wouldn't you say?
Totally. It's about connection.
He outlines things like, making a genuinely good first impression, how to criticize someone constructively without making them hate you.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Definitely. How to be a good conversationalist, and even how to make people glad to do what you want. Now, on the surface, this just feels like positive psychology, right?
It does. It feels like just good social skills.
Yeah. Building strong relationships, fostering mutual benefit, achieving goals through effective, empathetic interaction, being more likable, approachable, and, just more effective overall.
But what's really illuminating, I think, is how meticulously crafted this art of communication actually is, even when it seems totally innocent.
Ah, okay. How so?
Well, Eugene Schwartz, who was a legendary figure in advertising,
Right.
he pointed out that effective advertising, and you could argue effective communication in general, isn't just built from words. It's built on reactions.
Reactions. Okay.
Yeah. The goal is to create an architecture of words, as he put it, that evokes a very specific architecture of reactions in the prospect's mind.
Wow, an architecture of reactions. I like that.
Isn't it good? The aim is to generate this stream of acceptances, each one carefully sequenced, carefully directed, all leading towards a definite goal.
So it's not just talking, it's guiding.
Exactly. It powerfully illustrates how even commercial communication is designed not just to inform, but to meticulously guide a person's thought processes and emotional responses along a preset path, to lead them to a desired conclusion. It's a deliberate engineering of thought, in a way.
That's a profound observation when you really think about it. As you go through your day, scrolling social media, watching TV, even just chatting with someone, have you ever stopped to consider that architecture of reactions that might be getting built in your own mind? Are you aware of those deliberate sequences of acceptances someone might be trying to evoke?
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much communication is truly neutral versus having a hidden agenda.
It really does. And this leads us straight into the work of someone whose insights, arguably, form the bedrock of a lot of this influence architecture, Robert Cialdini.
Ah, yes, Cialdini. The big one.
Right. His huge book, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, it just lays bare these fundamental triggers for automatic compliance that we humans seem wired to respond to.
The shortcuts.
Yeah. And this isn't just about being likable like Carnegie talked about. It's about understanding these deep psychological principles that make us say yes almost without thinking.
And these principles themselves, they're neutral, right? They're just observations about human behavior.
Exactly. But incredibly powerful depending on how they're used.
Absolutely. Cialdini identifies, 6 universal principles, these mental shortcuts that often just bypass our critical thinking.
Right. Can you quickly walk us through those?
Sure. First up is reciprocity. This is that deep-seated human need to return a favor. If someone gives us something, even something small, we feel this obligation to give back.
Like the free samples at the grocery store.
Exactly. Or, a company sending you a helpful personalized guide. That small gift creates a subtle sense of debt, you could say.
Okay, makes sense. What's next?
Commitment and consistency. We have this really strong psychological need to be consistent with things we've already said or done, our previous commitments.
Right, we don't like to contradict ourselves.
Precisely. So if you get someone to agree to a small request first, maybe sign a petition, they're much more likely to agree to a larger related request later, like donating money to that same cause. It's the foot in the door technique, basically.
Got it. Number 3.
Social proof. This is huge, especially now. When we're unsure how to act, what do? We look to others.
You follow the crowd.
We follow the crowd. If everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing, or at least the safe thing. This is why testimonials, bestseller labels, seeing a long line outside a restaurant, why they're so persuasive. Millions served. That's pure social proof.
Okay, authority.
Authority. Yeah, we tend to obey figures of authority or even just people we perceive as experts. It's not just about official titles. It could be someone in a uniform, a doctor recommending a specific brand.
Or just sounding confident, maybe?
Sometimes, yeah. Or having credentials listed. Think about expert endorsements in ads, or even just the subtle use of jargon that makes someone sound knowledgeable.
Right. Okay, 2 more.
Liking. This one seems obvious, but it's powerful. We're just more easily influenced by people we like.
Simple enough.
And liking can come from lots of places: shared interests, compliments, physical attractiveness, even just familiarity. A salesperson who quickly finds common ground or gives you a genuine compliment is tapping right into this.
Uh-huh. And the last one?
Scarcity. Things seem more valuable when they're less available.
The limited time offer trick.
Exactly. Only 3 left in stock. Sale ends Friday.
These phrases create urgency. They play on our fear of missing out, FOMO, and they can push us to act quickly, often without really thinking it through.
Wow. It's incredible how pervasive those are once you start looking for them, isn't it?
They are literally everywhere. In marketing, sales, politics, even personal relationships sometimes. And here's where it gets like really interesting and maybe a bit unsettling again. Because our brains, they aren't these perfectly rational, always on guard machines, are they?
Not even close.
Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, just blows this idea up. He reveals we basically have 2 distinct systems of thinking.
System 1 and System 2.
Right. System 1 is fast, intuitive, emotional, mostly automatic. It's our gut reaction, effortless. And then System 2 is slower, more deliberate, logical, and it takes real effort.
Yeah, you have to consciously engage it. It's lazy. as Kahneman says.
Exactly. And this distinction is absolutely crucial because it explains why Cialdini's influence techniques are so potent. They often manage to completely bypass our conscious analytical guard.
They speak directly to System 1. They leverage its speed and its biases.
Right. So Kahneman highlights these cognitive biases that show these shortcuts in action, making us super susceptible to Cialdini's principles, like loss aversion.
Loss aversion, yeah, that's a big one. This bias makes us make extremely risk-averse choices when we're faced with mixed gambles, where you could gain something or lose something.
We hate losing more than we like winning.
That's the gist of it, yeah. We fear losing something we already have far more than we value gaining something equivalent but new. The pain of losing, say, $100 feels much stronger than the joy of finding $100.
Which is why insurance ads focus on the loss you'll avoid.
Precisely. They frame it around preventing a loss, tapping into that aversion.
But ironically, it can also lead to risk-seeking.
Yeah, in bad situations.
Yeah.
This is due to something called diminishing sensitivity. Basically, the emotional impact of a change gets smaller the further you are from your starting point.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
So imagine losing your first $100 versus losing an additional $100 after you've already lost, say, $10,000. That extra $100 loss hurts less when you're already deep in the hole, right?
Right, it feels less significant proportionally.
Exactly. So this can make people far more willing to take big, desperate risks, like doubling down when gambling just to try and get back to even, or to avoid crystallizing further losses. Even if the odds are terrible, it's a powerful driver in trying to recover from mistakes.
Wow, okay. And there are other biases too, right? Like the hubris hypothesis.
Oh yeah. CEO overconfidence, a classic cognitive bias. Research shows it leads to things like value-destroying mergers. CEOs get overconfident in their own judgment, ignore risks.
Or even earnings management, like cooking the books.
Essentially, yeah. Manipulating financial reports to present a better picture than reality, often driven by that same overconfidence or pressure. These are decisions stemming from an inflated sense of one's own abilities, ignoring red flags.
And you mentioned competition neglect earlier.
Right. This is fascinating. People often fail to adequately consider how other people's actions will affect their own strategy.
Like the eBay example?
Perfect example. Many sellers might intuitively end their auctions at, say, 7 p.m. EST, thinking peak bidders.
More eyeballs, right? Seems logical. System 1 thinking.
Exactly. But the smarter System 2 question is, when will there be the most bidders looking at my specific auction relative to the number of other sellers ending their auctions at the same time?
Ah, so it's about standing out from the competition, not just total traffic.
Precisely. And behavioral economists found the answer is often closer to noon, when there might be fewer total bidders, but also far fewer competing sellers. Those who neglect this competitive aspect often get lower prices. They fail to think strategically about the whole market.
That eBay example really crystallizes it, doesn't it? How our intuitive, fast thinking can miss critical factors that slower, more deliberate thinking would catch.
It does. And it shows how easily even supposedly sophisticated people can fall into these predictable decision-making traps.
So it really makes you pause, doesn't it? If we're all susceptible to these powerful cognitive biases, these mental shortcuts.
Which we are, all of us.
And we're constantly bombarded with these Cialdini-esque influence principles, reciprocity, scarcity, social proof, all that stuff. How much easier does it become for someone who knows these triggers, who understands this user manual for the human mind, to subtly guide our decisions, maybe without our full conscious consent, maybe even against our own best interests?
That's the crux of the ethical dilemma, isn't it? The knowledge itself is neutral, just psychological insight, but its application. That's where the power lies, power to shape behavior.
And it raises profound questions about autonomy, free will, and where that line truly falls between honest persuasion and, well, manipulation. 2, the slippery slope. When influence becomes manipulation. Okay, so we've laid out the groundwork. We see how deeply rooted these psychological triggers are, how Cialdini mapped them out, how Kahneman explained why they work because of our brain's shortcuts.
Right. The mechanics are there.
But that line between ethical influence and just outright manipulation feels incredibly thin sometimes.
It can be vanishingly thin and easily crossed.
And as we're about to see, it's a line that's been, well, gleefully crossed, especially when huge profits are on the table. Let's dive into some, frankly, chilling historical examples from high finance. This is where persuasion clearly curdles into cynical exploitation.
Yeah, when does influence cross that line? The world of finance, especially as depicted in books like Den of Thieves or Liar's Poker, gives us some pretty stark, undeniable answers.
Okay, like what?
Well, in Den of Thieves, you see clear cases of insider trading, obviously unethical and illegal, but also these intricate schemes designed specifically to mislead the marketplace, to create false perceptions.
Right.
Take Ivan Boishky. He famously bought huge amounts of Pargas stock right before a public announcement about a tender offer. His buying strongly implied he knew something the market didn't, inside information, giving him a massive unfair advantage.
A classic insider trade.
Exactly. But then there's an even more elaborate example involving Michael Milken, the junk bond king. Milken guaranteed Bokeski against any loss on his holdings of Golden Nugget stock. Now, this wasn't just a friendly favor. It was a deliberate strategy to, again, mislead the marketplace.
How so?
By guaranteeing the stock, Milken made a potential takeover of Golden Nugget seem much more likely, much more certain than it actually was. Yeah. This artificially inflated its perceived value, manipulated investor confidence, and crucially, ensured Golden Nugget's loyalty to Milken's firm, Drexel.
Wow. So creating a false sense of security or inevitability.
Precisely. These aren't accidental misstatements. They are calculated, deliberate deceptions designed purely to manipulate market perceptions for enormous financial gain.
And Liar's Poker paints an even bleaker picture of the culture, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Michael Lewis's account of life on the Salomon Brothers trading floor in the 80s, it's something else. He describes how junior traders were actively taught how to schmooze a customer.
Okay, schmoozing is one thing.
But it went further. They were explicitly encouraged, Lewis says, to disinform rather than inform.
Disinform their own customers.
Their own customers. Lewis notes this direct, almost nauseating correlation.
Yeah.
The greater the praise lavished upon a salesman within Salomon, the greater the eventual suffering of the customer.
That's appalling.
It is. The internal reward system of this incredibly powerful firm directly incentivized actions that were knowingly harmful to their clients. They were literally celebrating salespeople for effectively ripping off their customers.
So the whole ethical framework was just gone.
Or inverted, maybe.
Yeah.
The big swinging dick anecdote Lewis tells is just brutal.
Right, I remember that.
He talks about a salesman being showered with praise, a huge bonus, for successfully dumping what the salesman himself called godforsaken bonds.
Bonds he wouldn't touch himself.
Exactly. Knowing full well these incredibly risky, near-worthless securities would cause his most cherished customer huge losses. And the firm was so terrified of losing this kind of talent that they actually broke their own salary rules to keep these top manipulators happy.
It shows a systemic breakdown, doesn't it? Where manipulation wasn't just tolerated, it was actively celebrated and rewarded.
Absolutely. It prioritized profit and retaining rainmakers over any shred of ethical client treatment. And Benjamin Graham, in The Intelligent Investor, also warns about other forms of corporate deception, like corporate fraud and this practice of big bath or kitchen sink accounting.
What's that?
That's where companies deliberately lump all their bad news, write-offs, and charges into one really bad year.
To get it all out of the way.
Exactly. To make an easy show of apparent growth in the following years. It makes the recovery look much better than it is. These are all conscious, deliberate deceptions aimed at misleading investors and manipulating how the market sees them.
These aren't just abstract financial dealings, are they? They're concrete examples that serve as a huge warning.
They really do.
They show how easily trust gets shattered when financial gain is the only goal, how deliberate decisions are made to mislead people for profit, and how deeply that exploitation can get embedded in a culture if there are no ethical breaks.
It makes you wonder about the long-term costs, not just financially, but to the reputation and trustworthiness of entire industries.
Okay, let's pivot to an even more extreme example. Influence completely untethered from ethics, maybe even basic decency. Robert Moses.
Ah, the power broker. A monumental figure and a terrifying one in many ways.
Right. As Robert Caro chronicles, this wasn't just about winning an argument or pushing a project through. Moses wielded immense power, not just to defeat opponents, but to actively try and destroy them, personally, professionally.
It's a chilling look at what happens when that ability to influence is weaponized, completely without moral restraint.
So what kinds of tactics are we talking about, beyond just political hardball?
Oh, far beyond. Caro describes how Moses would systematically damage their reputations beyond repair. He'd do this by charging falsely that reformers or opponents had ulterior motives, often financial ones. He'd invent lies, fabricate scandals, spread disinformation just to discredit anyone who stood in his way.
So weaponizing information or misinformation.
Exactly. And beyond that, Caro writes, he did everything he could to silence that voice of opposition. He actively suppressed dissent rather than engaging with it or trying to persuade through logic or evidence.
So it moves beyond influence into outright coercion.
Absolutely. Coercion, the destruction of people's careers and lives, the tyrannical use of institutional power to dictate outcomes. He essentially eliminated any voice that challenged his vision, his power. He knew how to manipulate public perception and leverage authority to solidify his control.
The descriptions of him fabricating charges just to ruin reputations or actively silencing critics, it's a clear demonstration of a manipulative, destructive use of power, isn't it?
Totally. It wasn't about winning people over or finding common ground. It was about crushing dissent, achieving absolute control through sheer force of will and the tactical deployment of influence techniques taken to an extreme.
This extreme case really drives home the potential for harm, doesn't it? When influence is weaponized, especially when combined with unchecked power, it goes way beyond financial loss.
It really does.
Yeah.
It can lead to the personal and professional ruin of individuals, the silencing of important voices, and a fundamental undermining of any sense of fair play or democratic process.
It's a stark reminder that knowing how human psychology works, knowing those Cialdini triggers, without strong ethical boundaries, well, it can be terrifyingly destructive. 3. Modern manifestations. Dark patterns in the digital age. Okay, so we've seen how these principles of influence, these psychological insights, can be used for good, like Carnegie may be intended, or twisted for profit and power in the physical world, like on Wall Street or with someone like Robert Moses.
Right, the historical context is pretty damning.
But what does this all mean for today, especially in our hyper-connected, always-on digital lives? This concept of surveillance capitalism seems to bring these ethical questions right into the 21st century.
It really does, and often in ways that are much more subtle, more pervasive than the overt fraud or the brutal power plays we just discussed.
Oh, so
These modern tactics are designed to influence us, often not through force or explicit deception, but by playing on our known cognitive biases within these complex digital environments we inhabit.
Okay, so let's talk about surveillance capitalism. Shoshana Zuboff's work, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, really digs into this, right?
Meticulously. She details how companies, particularly Google initially, were driven by that intense Wall Street mantra of needing sustained and exponential profits.
Right, the pressure to constantly grow.
Exactly. And facing that pressure, especially around the year 2000, they developed this revolutionary, and you could argue ethically fraught, concept, behavioral surplus.
Behavioral surplus, what is that exactly?
It was a fundamental shift. It involved, as Zuboff puts it, annulling the reciprocal relationship that usually exists between a company and its users.
Annulling the reciprocal relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of just providing a service in exchange for your attention, like old media, or a fee, your behavior itself, every click, every scroll, how long you look at something, what you search for, maybe even biometric data down the line, all that became a proprietary raw material.
Wow. Our behavior as raw material.
Yeah. This behavioral surplus was extracted, analyzed, and used to build predictive models.
Yeah.
Models that could anticipate and crucially influence our future behavior. And this often happened without our explicit, fully informed consent.
Right, the infamous terms and conditions nobody reads.
Pretty much. Zuboff notes how Google's founders were initially quite opposed to advertising on ethical grounds, but the financial pressure eventually led them to embrace it. And in doing so, they fundamentally changed that relationship with users, moving from just providing a service to systemically extracting data and shaping behavior.
That shift, where our actions become this commodity to be harvested and sold, basically, it is profoundly unsettling.
It is, and it's the engine driving so many of the dark patterns we now encounter constantly online.
Okay, let's define dark patterns. What are we talking about here?
They're essentially user interface tricks, often subtle, sometimes not so subtle, but designed to make you do things you might not otherwise choose to do. Things that benefit the company more than they benefit you.
Like trying to cancel a subscription.
Classic example. You try to cancel, and suddenly you're clicking through 5 different screens, each one trying to guilt you into staying. Are you sure you want to miss out?
Yeah.
Or hiding the cancel button, making it tiny and gray, while the keep subscription button is huge and bright.
That's the Roach Motel pattern, right? Easy to get in, hard to get out.
Exactly. Or maybe you've seen confirm shaming.
Confirm shaming.
Yeah, where you're presented with an option like, yes, sign me up for marketing emails. And the alternative button says something like, no thanks, I enjoy being uninformed and paying full price.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen that. It makes you feel bad for saying no.
Precisely. It's designed to manipulate you through guilt or social pressure. And the list goes on, hidden costs that only pop up at the very last checkout step.
Ugh, hate those.
Disguised ads that look like real articles or user posts. Forced continuity, where a free trial automatically rolls into a paid subscription if you forget to cancel.
That one gets a lot of people.
It does. And it leverages our cognitive biases perfectly. Our inertia, our tendency to forget, our loss aversion. We don't want to lose access, even if we weren't really using it.
So all these tactics are basically weaponized Cialdini principles deployed digitally.
You could definitely see it that way. They're meticulously crafted to exploit our System 1 thinking, our laziness, our desire for consistency, our susceptibility to scarcity or social proof signals online, but they're often deployed for unilateral company gain, frequently at the user's expense in terms of time, money, or privacy.
This relentless drive for behavioral surplus, this constant exposure to dark patterns, it inevitably leads back to Stephen Covey's idea of the emotional bank account, doesn't it?
It really does. It's a powerful metaphor for trust in relationships.
Right. He says we make deposits through things like courtesy, kindness, honesty, keeping commitments. A healthy account means high trust. But what happens when this digital world, driven by behavioral surplus, feels like it's constantly making withdrawals, leaving our collective emotional bank accounts just depleted, both personally and in how we feel about these platforms?
Covey explicitly warns about this. He says when actions like discourtesy, disrespect, cutting you off, overreacting, ignoring you, becoming arbitrary, betraying your trust, threatening you, when these become habitual, the emotional bank account gets overdrawn.
And he saw this happening in organizations already.
Yes, he said chillingly, many organizations are filled with it. And he even extended it to personal relationships, saying many marriages have deteriorated to the level of hostility through a series of incidents just like this.
Wow.
So this isn't just about our personal lives. It applies directly to the trust, or maybe the profound lack of trust we increasingly feel toward the digital systems and platforms we rely on every day.
Because when companies consistently prioritize data extraction, engagement hacking, profit over genuine user value, transparency, respect,
They're making massive systemic withdrawals from that collective emotional bank account. They're eroding the very foundation of trust, maybe faster than they realize.
and this brings us right back to that critical ethical distinction Covey also made between genuinely seeking win-win solutions where both sides really benefit
Mutual benefit.
and people who are just talking win-win technique, but they don't really want to listen. They want to manipulate.
Yeah, the difference between real dialogue aimed at understanding and just an agenda-driven monologue disguised as conversation.
It really boils down to intent, doesn't it? Is the underlying intention truly mutual benefit? Or is it a veiled, calculated attempt to guide someone towards an outcome that mainly serves the influencer, often at the expense of the person being influenced?
That fundamentally is the core ethical problem we're circling around today. The intent behind the influence. Is it ethical persuasion or cynical manipulation?
So it forces us, as individuals navigating this digital world, to ask ourselves, in our own interactions with apps, websites, social media, online services, do we genuinely feel like deposits are being made into our emotional bank account?
Yeah, do we feel respected? Is there transparency, real value?
Or are we constantly feeling those subtle or maybe overt withdrawals, leading to this pervasive sense of distrust, frustration, this feeling that our data, our attention, our money is just being exploited for someone else's gain?
It's a very different kind of relationship dynamic than the one we might consciously think we have or want to have with these powerful digital entities. 4, the ethical reckoning, business, trust, and responsibility.
This whole discussion, it leads us to a really fundamental, maybe uncomfortable question, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
In this relentless drive for profit, especially the kind of sustained and exponential profits the market often demands, where do ethics actually fit in?
Right. Is it a core value or is it just optional, nice to have?
Can businesses genuinely achieve that idea of good ethics equals good business? The GEGB logic, if it means making real sacrifices, particularly short-term sacrifices that hit the bottom line.
It's not always a simple win-win, is it? Often there's a genuine tension, a real dilemma there.
Yeah. So how do our sources address this?
Well, the book Strategic Flexibility tackles this GEGB logic directly. It argues that companies can, in many cases, boost their economic performance by being more sensitive to things like pollution, waste reduction, ethical labor practices.
Okay, so the argument is that doing good can lead to doing well.
Yes, the idea is that being responsible can improve public image, reduce regulatory headaches, increase customer loyalty, maybe even spur innovation, all potentially good for business.
But there's a catch.
There's a big caveat. The same source points out that the real moral frontier is defined by sustainable development, and achieving true sustainability might require real sacrifices in economic profit.
So sometimes doing the right thing does cost money.
Exactly. It implies that good business isn't always automatically good ethics, without a conscious and sometimes difficult choice. The two aren't always perfectly aligned, especially when you think about long-term sustainability that goes beyond just the next quarterly report.
It raises that uncomfortable question. Is ethical behavior just another cost-benefit analysis for a business? Or is it something more fundamental, a genuine obligation? So this really challenges that comforting mantra you sometimes hear that improved moral performance always leads to increased profits.
It does. It suggests that sometimes true ethical behavior requires a different kind of calculation,
Yeah.
one that puts citizenship and moral obligation at least on par with, maybe even sometimes above, immediate economic profit.
It's about recognizing that point where doing the right thing might genuinely cost you in the short term.
And the true test of an organization's ethical character is whether it's prepared to make that hard choice to absorb that cost for its principles. That's where the rubber really meets the road,
Yeah.
ethically speaking.
Which leads to a really direct and important question for you, our listener, as both a consumer and a citizen.
Right.
When you're choosing products or services, do you consciously think about the ethical stance of the company, its environmental record, its labeling practices, how it handles your data, its transparency?
And if you do think about it, how much weight do you actually give that ethical dimension compared to, say, convenience, price, brand habit, or just immediate gratification?
These are the real-world trade-offs, aren't they? The decisions that both businesses and all of us as individuals face constantly.
They really are.
Okay, so given everything we've discussed today, Cialdini's principles, Wall Street deception, digital dark patterns, how can we as individuals navigate this world? A world full of both honest influence and really sophisticated, often hidden manipulation.
It's a huge challenge.
Richard Rumelt in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy offers a vital clue, I think. He reminds us that our intentions don't fully control our thoughts.
Right. We're not perfectly rational actors.
Yeah. And that we often abandon their judgment to the excitements of the crowd. This inherent human tendency to conform, to get swept up, to follow the herd. It's a major vulnerability, isn't it?
A huge one. It's wired deep.
So what's the antidote, according to Rumelt?
He emphasizes the critical need for individuals to form an independent judgment about important issues.
Okay, but what does that mean in practice?
It means actively thinking about how you think, engaging that slower, more effortful system 2 processing we talked about.
Right, don't just react.
Exactly. Expand the scope of your ideas beyond your initial assumptions. Subject your own beliefs and the messages you receive to deeper criticism and scrutiny. Question things.
It's about consciously resisting that pull, that seductive excitement of the crowd that can lead to disasters like speculative market bubbles or the spread of viral misinformation online.
Precisely. It's not just about being smart. It involves cultivating a healthy skepticism, a deliberate analytical approach, especially when something feels too good to be true or when everyone else seems to be rushing headlong in one direction.
And the insights from the most important thing illuminated really hammer this home in the investing world, right?
They do. It talks about how even smart, experienced investors can get completely swept up in these seemingly rational explanations for the latest eighth wonder of the world investment craze.
Forgetting the basics.
Totally forgetting to ask critical questions about the risks. Forgetting to ask if this new paradigm truly represents a departure from historical patterns or if it's just hype. They abandon their independent judgment for the lure of easy money or the fear of missing out.
Which is exactly what Rumelt warns against.
Exactly. It highlights just how crucial skepticism and independent judgment are for avoiding costly pitfalls, even, or maybe especially, when the crowd is cheering loudly.
So turning back to you, our listener, are you actively cultivating your own independent judgment?
Are you taking that extra moment to question assumptions, to seek out different perspectives, to think critically about the information and the subtle nudges you encounter every single day?
Whether they come from a salesperson, an ad, a social media influencer, a news article, a digital platform.
This conscious cultivation of critical thinking, it's not just a nice-to-have skill. It is perhaps your ultimate, most vital defense against both the overt manipulation and those more subtle, pervasive forms of influence that might not be serving your best interests.
It's really about taking back control of your own decision-making process, isn't it?
In a world designed to hijack it. Absolutely.
Now,
Outro.
wow. Okay, we have taken a truly comprehensive deep dive today, haven't we, into this dual nature of influence.
We've covered a lot of ground.
From the foundational art of winning friends and building genuine connections using principles like reciprocity and social proof, maybe like Carnegie envisioned.
To the positive side.
Right. All the way to the calculated schemes of financial predators on Wall Street and these insidious, dark patterns that are just woven into the fabric of our digital age.
Yeah, the spectrum is wide and often ethically troubling.
We've seen how these powerful psychological triggers, these Cialdini principles, and our own inherent cognitive biases, how they can be used not just to build connection, but conversely, to cynically exploit those very same biases.
Often driven, as we discussed, by that relentless, market-driven pursuit of sustained and exponential profits.
So ultimately, the question isn't really whether understanding human psychology or the principles laid out so clearly by people like Robert Cialdini is inherently good or bad.
Right. The principles themselves, knowledge, it's like any powerful tool, it's fundamentally amoral. It's just insight into human nature.
The real danger, then, lies not in the knowledge itself, but in the intent and the ethical framework or lack thereof of those who wield it.
Exactly. Which brings us back to that core question. By meticulously laying out these triggers for automatic compliance, has the widespread understanding of Cialdini's work essentially armed a generation of marketers, salespeople, tech designers with tools that are just too powerful to be used ethically? Does it inevitably lead down the path of manipulation?
Or, the flip side, has this very transparency, this clear explanation of how we are influenced, actually provided us, the consumers, the citizens, with the necessary awareness, the necessary tools to better defend ourselves against manipulation.
It's a paradox, isn't it? Does the knowledge empower the manipulator or the potential victim more?
It's a crucial question. So, as you, our listener, move through your day encountering just countless attempts to influence your decisions, what you buy, what you believe, how you spend your time, your attention, consider this. In a world where knowing how to persuade is so widely understood, so easily accessible, what practices, what kinds of commitments, what sort of leadership would truly build and maintain trust? Build it so profoundly that manipulation becomes not just unethical, but actually unnecessary for success.
What would a business world really look like if citizenship and moral obligation genuinely took precedence over those sacrifices and economic profit when those hard choices inevitably arise?
What stands out to you as the most crucial insight, the most pressing question from our deep dive today?